Hello, welcome to the Dimp Digital Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Appleyard. The panel for this week's debut show is Christopher Loding and Joshua Hall. How are we doing, chaps?
Hello, not bad. You?
Yeah, can't complain. Josh, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad at all, thank you.
Don't sound very excited.
Yeah, mate.
Cheer up, you grumpy cunt.
So this is a brand new show which I expect to sort of evolve over time. Let's be honest, lads, we don't really know what we do at the moment, so I imagine there's going to be plenty of changes that take place. We try and bumble our way to a format that requires the least amount of effort from us, but gives the guys at home something interesting and hopefully informative to listen to or watch. I thought we could just kick off by just giving a brief introductions of ourselves so that the audience are aware of what systems we are and perhaps if we have any gaming preferences. So I'll start. I'm an owner of a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I do have an Xbox 360 as well, but I've pretty much retired that now since I've finished The Walking Dead Season 2. I tend to be drawn to games that offer a rich and deep single-player experience, so I don't mind a bit of co-op. I'm not a big fan of competitive multiplayer, but genuinely I tend to prefer the solo experiences. Josh, let's move on to you. Let's let the people know what you're all about.
All right, well, I'm kind of more of a Nintendo-based gamer, I suppose. I've got the Wii and the Wii U both set up in my front room. I've got the Xbox One, which kind of sees most use, to be honest with you, in my household. I've still got the 360 and the PS2 set up, but really they're just there for show, I suppose, more than anything else. Gameplay-wise, I mean, I'm always into my competitive multiplayers, so I've been a big fan of the Call of Duty series for the last however long. I'm sure we'll come on to Advanced Warfare a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But really, that's kind of where my kind of main gameplay comes into. I do like a good narrative in a one-player story, but it has to be something quite spectacular to kind of keep my interest for the whole way through, if I'm completely honest with you. Either that or reasonably short that I can complete in 3 or 4 sessions, because I don't really have enough time to play much longer than that, if I'm completely honest.
Got ya. Excellent. Right, Chris, last but not least, give us what you got.
Yep, so I have the Xbox One and the Xbox 360 still set up. The only thing the 360 really sees is state of decay nowadays. I also have a PC which I occasionally use. It's mainly used for just Football Manager. It's the only purpose it really fulfills. I'm generally a multiplayer gamer, so most games I'll sort of look at when they come out and see what the multiplayer option is. I prefer playing with friends and stuff. As I say, the only thing I tend to play on my own is Football Manager, maybe a bit of FIFA. FIFA 15 is what I'm into at the moment. But yeah, I mean, as I say, when I got Call of Duty, I was looking forward to a single campaign, but as with that game, it's always about the multiplayer experience. Yeah, that's pretty much all I do, multiplayer.
Good. So I think we've got a good variety of people here in their different interests and what we like and dislike. I think we should crack on to the first sort of item on the agenda that we sort of spruced up and just go through what we've been playing for the last week. So, Chris, what have you been up to this last week?
Well, naturally, 2 big games released this week. Football Manager 2015 and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I haven't had an awful lot of time to play through much of the Call of Duty campaign, but I've played the first 2 missions and I'm very impressed with the actual single player campaign, which is often lacking nowadays in the Call of Duty franchise. But it looks like you can tell they've been developing it for 3 years, and you can tell it's got that feel of effort put into it rather than just a gesture made. Yeah, and Football Manager 2015, which is obviously a carry on from the popular series that they do every year, and that is currently getting played as we speak. I've just completed my first season, so I've also played a little bit of Destiny, but what with those 2 coming out, it's sort of been shelved.
So going back to Football Manager, I mean, I've got last year's edition and I played it for about 4 months and then, as usual, got hammered, relegated and quit. What are the sort of, is there many changes in this year's one that would make someone to come back to it, or is it pretty much a tweak of what was good last year? Is there any sort of new additions that people might be interested in playing through?
Well, I think now Football Manager's got its sort of basis of gameplay and everything. It's mainly just them sort of improving on it year by year, trying to make the interaction better. I mean, I've often thought there's limited interactions. You can imagine if you're a real Football Manager, you can sort of say, what you want to players, or you can have more interaction with them. But that's always been sort of lacking on Football Manager. It's always just been a name. So you'd have sort of Cristiano Ronaldo, but you wouldn't have much interaction with him. I mean, there's much more player interaction on it, I suppose. There's obviously a lot of focus on financial fair play and the financial side of things. I mean, mainly what I experience is, for example, I was Tottenham. The first thing that pretty much happened in the game was Jan Vertonghen coming to me and saying, I want to move to Barcelona. And then you sort of have to sort of decide whether you think it's the best thing to do is just keep him on, whether you let him go, try and get a good price. And you've got various options to say to him, but it all leads you down a route. So I tried to keep him, and I ended up saying, look, if we don't get the Champions League this season, then I'll let you go. Unfortunately, I finished 5th, so he hasn't actually come to me yet and said, well, I need to get out of here. I'm sort of just playing it by ear, but yeah, there's a lot of player interaction, there's a lot of player power on it now. So, for example, I just finished Etienne Capoue and Moussa Dembele had good seasons. They've both come to me and basically said, I want a new contract for doing really well. Yeah. There's a lot more sort of interaction from the players, and everything you do sort of almost has a consequence. I mean, I relegated Adebayor into reserves because he was pissing me off. He was just being shit and being a moany bastard. So I thought, right, I'll get you in there. And then he's like, right, why have you put me in the under-21s? And so I was just like, well, because you're being a cunt, basically. And he was like, right, well, I don't agree with that. And then it actually, there's some sort of interaction between you and the player. So, it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
So it's almost like playing as a real football manager, the fact you've got to pander to all these sort of pampered stars and whatnot.
You at the beginning of the game, you can set statistics as well. So you can set your player interaction, what level you're at. So whether you're coaching or sort of like a Mourinho style manager. So you've got two sort of different sides. You set your sort of skill base to start off with, and then you sort of go into it. But it's much more involved. So if you just want to go on there, select your team and press play, it's not sort of like that. You have to decide what sort of lineup you want, formations, and you have a lot of interaction. So if you're having a bad time of things with form and stuff, your board will come to you and go, look, what's going on, what are you doing, sort it out. So there's a lot more interaction between all the parties involved.
Cool. So it sounds like it's quite an in-depth game. Sounds good. It's
very in-depth. Yeah. I've literally been at work and then thinking, right, I want to finish and come back and play Football Manager. So
I think they all turn into a bit like a crack addiction eventually, don't they? Once you get your eye on how to play it.
Absolutely, it is PC crack. You'll just want to sit there and just play it all day and game after game. I mean, I've had the early release beta as well, so I've been playing it for a couple of weeks now, and it is very good.
Cool. So that sounds good. We'll go into Advanced Warfare in a bit more detail later on. I've been playing Sunset Overdrive, which is obviously an Xbox One exclusive, and it's one of the sort of many exclusives that Xbox One have had over the PlayStation in this first year of the new console generation. I'm surprised neither of you two have picked it up. Personally, I thought you two would be quite interested in that. The multiplayer is a bit weak, I think, at the moment. It's mainly co-op. I've not found any sort of competitive multiplayer, but the game itself is very entertaining and just pretty much a gamer's game. There's no serious storyline involved in it. I mean, have you two seen this game? Are you interested in picking it up? Is it anything that's on your radar?
Yeah, I've been playing quite close attention to it, if you will. Obviously, I've seen a lot of the gameplay. I think it'll be something that I'll probably purchase before too long, and it's something that I'll see quite a few hours of gameplay in my house. But to be honest with you, the reason that I haven't at the moment, there's two reasons behind it. One is obviously, as Chris mentioned, the releases of Advanced Warfare, which for me kind of took priority over most other games coming out at the moment.
Yeah.
And secondly, I find games like that where, like you mentioned, there's not sort of loads of storyline. There's lots to do, but not necessarily sort of you spend a lot of time just kind of aimlessly wailing away hours just doing different bits. I find the Assassin's Creed games can be quite similar to that at times. You have to spend you have to invest quite a lot of time to really get kind of the most out of it, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried that if I buy it now, I'm not going to give it the proper amount of time that it deserves. So I think I might just put that on the back burner for the little while until I get bored of the other releases that have come out and the games that I'm currently playing, and then sort of have a little look into it.
Yeah, that's a good point you raise there about the release schedule being quite congested. I know some games have moved their releases back well into next year. I mean, do you think that's a smart move, or are they missing out on the Christmas rush? Because obviously this is the time of year where people are buying for relatives and whatnot, or is it smarter just to hold off and try and find a gap in the year that's coming up?
I think it really depends on the game, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, kind of Call of Duty. Certainly, what I'm finding now playing online is, whereas sort of the Call of Duties of maybe I suppose I can say 10 years ago now, where you felt like you were playing a much younger audience. There was a lot of people on there who'd obviously got a relative to buy it for them and were playing, and you felt like one of the older ones on there. Whereas now, I think that generation has kind of grown up and is still playing it. So it tends to be, when I'm online, I tend to find that I'm playing against people who are quite a lot older, or certainly feel older than it used to. And as such, that game's kind of come out for the release. I think other people will be releasing more sort of child-friendly games, if you will, nearer to Christmas. But obviously no one wants to kind of be competing with that, especially when the hype's been built up with it for so long. Like Chris mentioned earlier, it's been in production for sort of 3 years. It's the one that kind of everyone's been looking forward to, if you will, or kind of keeping their eyes on. I mean, you'd have to be pretty silly to try and go up against. I think that's why Sunset Overdrive hasn't seen quite as much sort of publicity as it perhaps should have done. I think if it had at any other time, it would have been a big release game. But as it is, it's just kind of been overshadowed by the Call of Duty.
Yeah, it's a big juggernaut. It's not really sensible to go up against them, I guess. And although Sunset Overdrive came out first, I've got a feeling a lot of people thought, well, next week Call of Duty's coming out, so why bother getting this when I'm going to be sinking countless hours into an online multiplayer mode that doesn't really have an ending? And people are quite happy to sit there in Prestige 4 or 5 times before they bin it off for next year's one. I mean, apart from Call of Duty, what have you been playing then, Hull? Or is that just it?
No. I've as Chris mentioned, I've been playing quite a bit of Destiny still. It's definitely a game that I'm going to invest a lot more time into, and I know we'll obviously talk about it later on. So that I've been playing. I have been using the Wii U a little bit to play Mario Kart and Super Mario Brothers. They're both entertaining games, good party games if you have people over, etc. Definitely not one for sort of the absolute hardcore gamer, but something that I can kind of keep. Like I say, play with others who are not such computer game freaks as perhaps the three of us are. And also, I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone on the PC. Obviously, BlizzCon's on at the moment. I know you guys are not particularly sort of big World of Warcraft Hearthstone players, but it's kind of been the World Championships this weekend. There's been a lot of coverage on YouTube and everything else. I've been keeping up to date with that, and I'm playing a lot of that as well, so it's definitely one that's kind of keeping my interest and has done for quite a while now.
So was you a big fan of the World of Warcraft when that was out all them years ago? Was you one of those people that sort of lost their lives in it, or was you sort of light touch into it?
I didn't play World of Warcraft probably quite as much as I could have done, I suppose. I played that, and there was another one called Guild Wars that came out.
Yeah.
They were both kind of the big MMOs that I played online, but this one that's come out at the moment, because those two, like you said, you have to kind of invest so much time and almost lose your life into, which once again do. This is a kind of turn-based card game rather than an online RPG or anything like that. So it's a lot more kind of can pick it up and play it for a short period of time, and it's been released for iOS devices. So playing it on my iPad is ideal, really. And like I say, quite often what I found myself doing is playing on my iPad whilst I keep up to date with the World Championships on my phone, just streaming them live. So it's been certainly been one that I've put some hours in, put some time into for sure.
Excellent. So it sounds like we've all had sort of a varied week in terms of what we're doing. What is interesting is the fact that I've got a PS4 and that's had no action this week whatsoever. In terms of the console wars at the moment, I'd still say the PlayStation's the better piece of hardware, but the games that are out, you can't argue that having Titanfall come out earlier this year and Sunset Overdrive and even Forza Horizon for the motorsport fans, considering Drive Club's been such a disaster for Sony, that the Xbox, in terms of the actual software that's out there, is probably leading that. one game that is on both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 is Destiny. Now, I've completely skipped over Destiny. I followed the previews. I've watched a few Let's Plays and whatnot, and I don't know. As I said earlier, I'm into sort of a solo experience, but I don't mind a bit of co-op multiplayer. I think that's the best type of multiplayer there is, and this, for me, seemed like it was going to, cater for that sort of hole that I've got at the moment. But it just didn't grab me by the gonads. I mean, you two have both got it. You've got your Fire Squad set up. Sell it to me. Why should I be picking this up and becoming the third man of your Fire Squad? Not only just to help you out and obviously beat these difficult bosses, because no doubt you're struggling without my skills.
It's just, when you drill down to the basics of the game, you are effectively going and doing same missions, and you're just killing loads of enemies and a boss at the end of it. But the game sort of keeps you hooked, because at the end of it there's a chance, or there's an end goal. So you sort of start off as a basic character going through. You start on the Earth, and you defeat the enemies on the Earth, and then you move on to the Moon. The actual base storyline in it isn't overly strong.
No.
I know Peter Dinklage got a lot of flack as well for his part in playing it. You don't see. I don't know about you, Josh, but I didn't really pay an overly large amount of attention to the story, because you just want to get in there with your guns and your abilities and just kill some stuff. It's an absolutely beautiful game. They've spent a lot of time on the rendering. It's just, you in the tower, which is like the safe home bit where you go to do all your get all your missions and bounties and stuff. You just look over the edge, and just the draw distance, and it's just a beautiful game to play. Josh wants to elaborate.
Yeah, no, I think you've kind of hit on a good point there. In terms of graphically, just to start with, it's an absolutely fantastic game. It looks superb. The draw distances and everything. Just
we were playing it earlier, and we were just standing on Mars, weren't we? And we just went, look at that! Just look up in the air. Like, there's all enemies around. You got all this stuff going on, but you just look at that. Look at the sky. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. It's difficult to fault it in that essence. With regards to kind of the gameplay and the story, story is average, nothing overly amazing. I think the gameplay is very good, but probably in line with many of the first-person shooters. But I cannot put the game down. I cannot stop playing it. There is something about it that is so horrifically addictive. It is. For those that have played kind of the Borderlands series, I would make comparisons to it as a kind of a realistic-looking Borderlands. It works on a level-based system. A lot of people, when I was playing it, said that the game really begins at kind of level 20, which is when you kind of max out on leveling through experience, and you have to gather what's called light armor in order to level up to further levels, if you will. And it's true, because certainly like Chris said, we go online and play the same missions over and over and over, probably for 4 or 5 hours, in an attempt to gain specific items that will allow us to level up our armor further to be able to get to the higher levels. And it's ridiculous that I'm playing the same things over and over, but I'm not getting bored of them. I'm still quite happy to do them. Yes, okay, it gets a bit frustrating, a bit repetitive at times, but end of the day, I'm still playing the game more than I'm playing any other Xbox game that I have, so I must be doing something right.
Yeah. It's getting criticism. People are saying that the story's not there, which you've both alluded to, saying it's probably the weakest part maybe of the game, is that the story doesn't seem like there's much there. But it is more the fact that you're going to be doing a lot of the stuff competitively, going through these strikes and whatnot, building up your loot, getting new armour and unlocking new missions. Me and you, Josh, have spent lots of hours playing the Halo series, and obviously Bungie developed this. Gameplay wise, if I was to pick this up, would I feel straight at home, or is there enough difference in there that it feels quite fresh, or is it sort of reworking old?
Those who are familiar with any kind of first-person shooter are not going to pick this up and think, "Oh, this is new. This is something a bit different." No. You have obviously your special abilities and different classes that have different things going on, but essentially it is very similar to probably 90% of the first-person games that you play. Obviously there's always going to be slight tweaks to controls, which you can obviously customize to get back to what's comfortable to you. But, no, essentially it's not a difficult one to kind of pick up and start playing. As I mentioned, for someone like yourself who's quite into sort of the one player and like having a good storyline to go along with the game, I'm not sure it would have quite enough to keep you entertained for any long period of time.
Yeah. Realistically,
the single player campaign can be done in, as I mentioned, for me, which is perfect, in probably 4 or 5 good solid sessions. If you, I mean, I'm talking serious sessions, that is, but you know, it's beyond that. Even the online multiplayer for it, I think, is very, very good. It's very entertaining. It's not the best I've ever played, but I'm still sinking plenty of hours into it, because essentially at the end of it, there is still that possibility of gaining the extra loot that I need in order to level up my character.
Yeah, so I've heard about this loot, that it's quite random. Does that not become frustrating that you sometimes won't get dropped decent loot, or is that just part and parcel of the game?
It's become completely part and parcel. I mean, I'm not the best player online in terms of the multiplayer. I mean, Chris is probably slightly better than I am online, but we both kind of hashed it out for a while together. And the thing is, at the end of it, basically, essentially, once the game is over, it will randomly award loot to everyone that's played. So, for example, some people will go online and then not do anything. They'll just stand there. You might finish sort of 0 kills, the 12, 13 deaths or whatever, but still get rewarded with a decent piece of armour at the end of it. So, in that essence, it can be frustrating, I suppose, but essentially, at the same time, you've got to understand that it's a game that's been marketed at the masses for those.
Yes.
Quite nice to know that you're going to get a reward regardless, or you're possibly going to get a reward regardless of how well you've done.
It can really shit on you, though. I mean, you get these things which are called engrams. Now, there's a cryptarch in the tower, so you'll get awarded. There's different types. There's a common engram. I don't think there is common engrams. There's just common drops. Then you get rare engrams, which you don't know what they are. So it'll be a class. So it'll be like a primary weapon engram. You don't know what it's going to be. It'll be any primary weapon, and you can get that for legendary and exotic as well. Now, for example, earlier I got a very random legendary drop for an engram, and I was like, yes, an engram. And I thought, well, I've had these before, and basically there's 3 different character types. There's Titan, Warlock, and Hunter. Now, it's completely random across any character, so you could end up getting a legendary drop or an exotic drop, and it goes, right, well, there you go. You go to the cryptarch who decodes it, and it goes, well, there you go. It's a Hunter helmet, and you're like a Titan. You can't even use it. So it's random to the point of it's extremely rare to get a good drop, but then when you do get the good drop, you've got an even lesser chance of it being actually usable for yourself. So you can get all that excitement, and you won't even be able to use it necessarily.
So what happens with that type of drop? Do you just trade it in? Is there like a trading mechanism on there where you can trade it with other players?
I mean, you can't trade between players.
Right.
You can disassemble armour.
Yep.
So, say for example, if you were to collect something that was of a different class to you, you can disassemble it, and then it will give you materials that will allow you to upgrade pieces of armour that are for your character. So, you know, it's not completely useless, and you can also store it in like a vault in the tower, which will then allow you to use it for, if you were to have 2 characters of 2 different classes, you could effectively have 1 character class, or 1 type of character for each class, and kind of pull your armour together. So if you get something that's not for the initial class that you have, you can store it and give it to one of your other characters, if you will. So you can trade between yourself in that essence. But certainly it's not. I mean, it is frustrating when you kind of pour hours in, and you know, you finally get the kind of legendary piece of gear that you've been looking for, and it turns out that you can't even put it on because it's the wrong type of helmet or something.
Yeah. Okay.
I say that is for. I mean, I've been very fortunate in that everything that I've had has fitted my character, whereas Chris has not been quite so fortunate.
Well, that's because he's.
It has shat on me so many times. I've got legendary engrams so many times. Got excited, gone to cryptarch and decoded it. It's just gone. Nah, can't use it, and it's just like, you literally get 1 in a blue moon. It's just the most frustrating thing, but that's part of what keeps you playing, I think, is the knowledge that at any point you could get one of these drops, and you sort of like, it's the addiction of knowing that the randomness of it as well.
Yeah, and maybe I reckon it's built on a real life karma system where dickheads tend to get nothing and nice people get half decent stuff. So maybe that's why you're missing out.
It explains why we've reached a barrier then.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to pick it up yet. I mean, I know there's DLC coming out shortly for it. I'm thinking of waiting until that's out, but then there's the risk that I'm going to be too far behind to catch up. Hey, Josh, I could give you a couple of sentences just to give it one last sell to me. Give us a pitch.
If you were to pick it up now, I would recommend playing it for a while and seeing if it is something that you're going to get interested in, because it's going to be one of these games where you're either going to play through the single player, have it done in a short period of time, and then put it down and rot on your shelf like a lot of games do, or you're going to get absolutely addicted to it. There's not an awful lot that I can say to you other than, considering there is no singular component other than graphically that really pulls me into this game, but I cannot stop playing it. It is something about it is horrifically addictive. Once again, it's another one I can pick up and play for a short period of time or for 6 hours. There's something about it that they have got absolutely spot on. It's something that Bungie are notoriously good at doing, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is to be able to sell it to you, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite intriguing. You say that it's hard to put down and you can't put your finger on it, because I imagine the similar thing that I've had with Trials Fusion. Again, it's a shitty 2D game, basically, but for some reason I just cannot put that game down. And like you said, if you can jump on and play it for a short amount of time, sometimes that definitely lends itself to being a positive influence, because we haven't got time always to sit there and do 4-hour sessions. Okay, well, Destiny's definitely something I'm going to consider in the future and look at. You guys have done a half decent job of selling it to me. Not quite closed the sale, but decent enough. Whilst we're on first person shooters, I mean, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, that's out. It's been out for almost a week now. How you've both got it, so what's going on? I've played up to Blops 1, I think. I don't think I've got Blops 2. Haven't played any since. Is there any reason for me to come back here, considering that online multiplayer is not really my bag? I'll play it for a little while. Is it going to be the same old CoD, or have they done something significantly different to entice me back?
Well, speaking from my point of view, now I know obviously Chris mentioned that he's played the first couple of missions on the single player. I have completed the single player on it now. It didn't take long. I did it in basically probably about 2 days. I only done it on regular difficulty. I'll probably jump in and try and do some on veteran for a while, which is the hardest setting. I've had every Call of Duty since Call of Duty 2, I think. Just looking at myself now, yeah. I think I've got pretty much all of them. I've played a lot of them to death. I certainly invested a lot of time in Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, the usuals, really. And the same recurring theme has occurred for the last 4, maybe, in that the single player has not interested me in the slightest. I've not even bothered. I've got a couple of missions in and I put it down and thought, nah, bugger it. With this one, I have to say I think it's been the best single player mission that they have had since Call of Duty 4, which in my opinion is still the best Call of Duty. Obviously, I'm sure you've seen in the television adverts, Kevin Spacey's in it.
Yeah.
The cutscenes for it and a lot of the kind of interactions are phenomenal looking. You know how quite often you play a game and you see characters on there, but you're quite aware that they're still digital characters that have been sort of computerized, if you will. Because this one has Kevin Spacey, which is a recognisable face for you. The other faces, which although you don't necessarily recognise, instantly start to look more realistic and more humanised, if you will. So I would feel straight away that all the cinematics in it are absolutely superb. It really suckers you into the storyline. It really makes for a fantastic addition to the game. I think that's been a big factor in that all of the storyline I really got drawn into, and I think it's because it became so much more personable when I recognised the characters that are on there.
Yeah.
So, although, like I say, it's not the longest of campaigns, and I'm sure that hardcore Call of Duty gamers will probably complete it relatively quickly, it's definitely been the best single player that I've played for the last maybe 5 or 6, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, that's decent to know, I guess. Chris, I mean, you've not really paid much attention to the story by the sounds of things. You've done a couple of missions. Multiplayer wise, is it again? Are we seeing the same old COD, but apart from you can double jump? I mean, is there anything new, anything different?
Not really, no. I mean,
Wow.
I think I read that they've got a completely new engine. They've completely redesigned this and all the
Does
movement
it feel
and
new?
everything. No, it doesn't particularly feel new. It feels very samey. I think they've just tried to make it very overly customizable, and there's always something going on. I mean, I've realised when you used to die on the old ones, you sort of had time to figure out where you were and just go, right, I'm going to go there or whatever. You literally you die and you come back and you're literally put straight back into the battle again almost. And it's just like, you don't get a time to just get acclimatised to the game or just see what's going on or appreciate the maps or anything really. It's just all you're concentrating on all the time is, right, is there someone behind me, what's going on, and you just fire in all the time. It's very mental, and it's very hard to hit people now as well, because they've introduced this double jump, and you not only can you double jump, you can sort of dart in the air.
Yeah.
So you sort of everyone's sort of really evasive. But I'm like Josh. I've only really started properly picking it up at Call of Duty 4, and I've invested a lot of time since in pretty much every Call of Duty up until Ghosts. But it just feels like they're. I don't know. My opinion is that they bring one out too regularly. I think every year is too long, too short period of time. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's
it's much too
interesting, because this obviously is done by a Sledgehammer game. So now there's going to be, although there's going to be a 3-year cycle in terms of the development, because there's 3 different studios that are going to do each of the different arms of Call of Duty. They're all under the Activision banner, but there's 3 developers doing it. Does it feel like there's been 3 years worth of work put into this? I mean, you're right in saying there's one every year, but to me, they've never felt like they've had that sort of 3-year or 2-year development cycle in them. It seems like they are just churning them out. What can the developers do to sort of set themselves apart from the other arm of Call of Duty? Because I imagine they're in competition with each other, because there's 3 developers. They're all fighting to try and get sales and get the best Call of Duty that's out to date, just using the Call of Duty name and brand.
I think they're struggling. It feels like this one's almost not a rip-off of Titanfall, but it feels very similar in what it's trying to achieve. When Titanfall come out, I thought, it's just going to be like CoD with Titans in it, and you sort of getting a robot, and it wasn't. It was different. The maps were very good. They're big open maps, and there wasn't. You sort of would spawn back into it, have a chance to get your surroundings going on. You could choose whether you wanted to sort of go in close, medium range, long range. You sort of had a choice of how you wanted to play it. I kind of feel like the new Call of Duties sort of don't give you that option of you play it how you want to play it. The game wants you to play it in a certain way, and it makes it feel like you just have to get out an SMG and run round frantically, get 2 kills and die. On the previous Call of Duties, I'd be able to eke out a couple of long kill streaks a game, but on this one, I'm even struggling to sort of get my UAVs in, my 3-4 kill streak, and it's
is
just
that because you're poor now? Is that because you?
Well, that is something that we've also considered actually. Past couple of years, we didn't put a lot of time into Ghosts, did we, Josh? Compared to the other CODs. It just feels like we probably have lost it a bit, but it doesn't take you long to pick it up again. But it definitely feels different, but it feels samey at the same time, in that. When I pick up a game, I want to be able to play it how I want it, not how the developers necessarily want me to play it. And I feel like with Call of Duty at the moment, they want to push you into a corner of how they want it played.
Yeah, so it's playing at breakneck speed.
Yeah, I've put quite a bit of time in online, probably a bit longer than Chris has, maybe not loads, but the multiplayer on it is. It's kind of I don't know whether I've kind of put Call of Duty on a bit too much of a pedestal, if you will. Since realistically for me, since maybe Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops 1, there hasn't been a multiplayer that has really taken me, and I've thought, wow, this is really something special. I enjoyed Black Ops 2, I enjoyed Modern Warfare 3. I didn't particularly like Ghosts. And I can honestly say that this one so far has been less than impressive, especially as the first Call of Duty to come out on the next-gen consoles. I really think that it's kind of as Chris said, it's trying too hard to be sort of to compete with kind of Titanfall. It hasn't focused on the things that it needs to focus on. I think the gameplay is smooth, but in some instances is too quick. Like you say, all the maps feel quite confined. I never really get a chance to sort of sit and get my bearings. Whereas on the older games, there'd be certain maps where I think, right, I'm going to snipe on this map, or I'm going to have an SMG, or I'm going to have an assault rifle and go for a bit of the two. On this one, it just feels like, right, I need to get in something that's going to work in close combat and nothing else. I mean, I'm very frequently getting shot in the back or in the side, which, as I'm sure many people will understand, is the most frustrating thing in the world. I mean, I've not got a brilliant track record with sort of keeping controllers in good working order, but I can tell if I keep going on this game, then my first Xbox One casualty is going to be to Call of Duty. Because I literally, the other day, I was playing with another friend, and I genuinely could feel myself getting the rage come on. I don't mind it sometimes. I mean, I'm perfectly familiar with Call of Duty rage. It's been something that's been quite a big part of my life for the last few years. But I want to feel like at least sometimes I can kind of get something going on. And as Chris said on this, I don't go into any game thinking, right, I'm going to be able to get a nice high kill streak on this map, because I just get dominated. I don't know whether, like we said before, we've got a bit slower and a bit more tired in our aging.
Getting old.
But I'm not impressed with it at all. I think it's too frantic, and they've tried to be too clever with it, whereas they should have focused a bit more on the fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, I've played, as I said at the top of the show, I'm not a big fan of competitive multiplayer, but Titanfall was. It seemed for me. I mean, I'm shit basically at games, and I'm shit at competitive multiplayer, especially. It's probably why I don't enjoy them as much. But Titanfall, I felt, was very accessible, even to a player of my poor quality. With having the bots there, and it just was easier to pick up. It didn't seem like if someone sees you first and they'll shoot you in the back, you're dead. You sort of had a bit of room to get away and turn around and turn the tide a little bit. And I think that Call of Duty tends to be very fast twitch, breakneck speed. If you're not quick to react, you're basically going to an early grave. I think Titanfall was one of the, that's the standout game for me this year, which is, for me to say that, is quite odd, because
totally multiplayer as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was no story in that whatsoever, but it was just such a breath of fresh air, and it was so accessible to someone like me that it really impressed me. It sounds like that more Advanced Warfare at the moment is struggling a little bit. I think we've spoke about enough about that. Your opinions have been noted here in my brain as to whether I'm going to bother with that. A game that we've all sunk probably 50 hours into is Grand Theft Auto 5, and it's getting a release on next gen. We saw a trailer earlier on this week which introduced first person for the current gen, or the next gen, whatever you want to call them, consoles. Now, I'd heard rumours there was going to be first person view, and I thought, well, that's going to be a load of old shit if I'm honest, because they're just going to plop a camera down there. But from what I've seen, the gameplay wise, it looks like they've totally revamped that view. They've added new animations, they've added new sort of physics and that to cater for if you're going to switch to first person. I mean, you guys, I must have spent a good 80 hours in Grand Theft Auto 5, and that is probably a low estimate. You guys have probably spent as much, or maybe a little bit less. I mean, are you going to repurchase and double dip on this one?
Absolutely.
I mean, is it the first person? If it was just third person, would you still be happy to get it again, just so you can start playing it on current gen, or has the first person view tipped you? I mean, are you even going to play in first person view? Because to me, still, although it looks great, that doesn't feel like Grand Theft Auto to me.
The argument could have been said when it was a top view game. You was looking down on it, and they went, "Well, we're going to put it into third person view," and it's probably a bit like, not too sure about that, but it just feels natural. I'm not sure how natural it's going to feel playing Grand Theft Auto like that, but I'll be interested to see how much they've actually put into it, sort of effort-wise. I mean, I don't want it to just feel like they've just dumped a camera down there and you sort of don't get an extra feel for it, but I don't feel like it's going to add an awful lot, really, playing it in first person. I mean, it might do, but
from the trailer I saw, it seemed like to me, for someone, I've played through the story campaign twice, so I'm quite familiar with how that all works, and just seeing it in first person to me added, I don't know, I just felt like it was going to add a new way of playing it, like a new experience, because you're seeing it at that street level, and everything from your shooting, your aiming is all going to be completely different, because you haven't got the luxury of being able to swivel the camera around and see where enemies are. You're going to have to be taking it all between your eyes. Driving and that, I'm not quite sold on whether driving around the city with cops ramming into the side and back is going to be too great in first person view, because I think for a game where you're getting smashed in from the side and back with other cars, you need a first person view to take a look at. So what I'm hoping is you can sort of customise it so that when you're on foot it's first person, but when you're in a vehicle or a plane or a bike it will jump to third person. But we'll see when that comes out. But I don't know, I'm looking to play through the whole campaign again just in first person. I mean, you guys like first person shooters. I know you're a fan, Josh. I mean, is this giving you sort of an extra boost for the game? Are you happy they're introducing this? Can't be bad that it's there, can it?
I think it's the most unnecessary addition to a game that they could have possibly come up with, to be honest with you. I have played absolutely zero of the story. I've literally not even done the first mission. I played far enough through to be able to get into the online multiplayer. I wasn't overly keen on purchasing the game in the first place, if I'm honest. I'm very glad that I did, don't get me wrong, because I've sunk a lot of hours into the online bit, just from us just really working around, to be honest with you. But the story missions on the GTAs have not ever really grabbed me. I think one of the things that I quite like about it is the fact that it's third person. I don't really need another first person shooter in my life, and like you say, I think that unless they've really, I can't help but feel it's just going to be a bit clunky and not very well controlled. I can't see how they could have made such a huge change to the game. And have done it kind of efficiently and well, if you will. I'm very worried that they're just going to kind of spoil what is already a very, very good game. I will purchase it on the Xbox One. There's no purely because I know that a lot of friends will be online. It's a good social game to play. It's one that's easy to pick up and kind of just waste a few hours on, just not really doing very much. I don't think I'll use the first person factor to it at all, if I'm completely honest with you. I don't really feel the need for it, but I could certainly see why a lot of people are quite sort of excited about it. As I mentioned, for someone like yourself who's done a single player mission a couple of times, it certainly adds a new dimension and just like a bit of a change to it to kind of keep you entertained for when it comes out on the next gen consoles.
No, that's fair point you raised there. I mean, no one was really clamouring for GTA to be in first person, because like you said, the market's pretty much saturated with first person shooters that probably do things a lot better. The game's designed for it. I don't know, I mean, it sounds like we're all going to get it regardless, so the first time round seems to be enough for us to all sit there and pay another 40-50 quid for it, which I don't think you'd do with many games if they were just upgraded to next gen. But it's coming out in a couple of weeks or so. I think it's November the 18th, so we'll all find out then what an impact that has made. Well, I think, chaps, we've covered off everything that I wanted to cover off. Got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything for you guys that you want to bring up or mention? Anything that's bothered you throughout the week?
Yeah. I would like to know what is different about Sunset Overdrive that doesn't make it like Dead Rising. I mean, I must admit, when I saw the videos about it, the first thing I thought was, right, well, it's already been done. It's almost Dead Rising, but you can just jump around a bit. I mean, what sets it apart from other games? What makes it unique?
Yeah, so Sunset Overdrive is a shooter first and foremost. So there's melee action in there, but it's not a great big part of it. Whereas Dead Rising was 90% melee, and there was ranged weapons in there, but they were fucking crap. So it's a shooter where you're also bouncing around and can grind off things. It's less of a shooter and more of a, I don't want to say Tony Hawk's because you're not on a skateboard, but it feels that way, that you're trying to string combos together and you're using the environment to get up and around and get the advantage on the enemies. Whereas Dead Rising 3 was just a melee fest. You're trying to just grind your way through countless enemies.
To me, it sounds, because I know you've got like disc launchers and stuff like that, like CD launchers or whatever it is, vinyl launchers in it and stuff like that. And I just thought it's just very reminiscent of the sort of attitude they took in Dead Rising with all the customizable weapons, and it just felt like that to me.
The weapons are a bit mental, but like I said in my video in the Before the Bell, which you can view on the YouTube channel, make sure you do. It's meant to be a fun game, and the tone of it is that you've got these weapons that are completely crazy and out there. And it's just a break from having to shoot a real gun for once, I guess. It's something a bit new, a bit interesting. If you're interested in, serious games and something that could happen in the real world, this is totally not the right game. But I wouldn't compare it to Dead Rising, certainly, just because of the way you're defeating the enemies and the way you get around. Dead Rising 3 was okay for about 4 hours, and after that I got really, really frustrated and sick of it. But Sunset Overdrive, I'll say I'm about 5-6 hours in, it's still interesting. The mission structure is quite varied, so that's always helped, especially for me in my single player games. But yeah, I wouldn't compare it to Dead Rising. Apart from that, it's an open world that has zombie like creatures in it. That is all I'd say.
Okay. I don't think it's kind of a terrible thing to necessarily be similar to another game anyway. I mean, no. Obviously you mentioned that it's not, but I mean, we play enough first person shooters. I mean, there's not an awful lot of difference between a lot of the ones that are out at the moment, but I'm still giving each of them a fair amount of gameplay, so it's certainly no bad thing to kind of be something. No, I mean, if the formula is there and it's working, why not just pick it up and try and adapt it? But it is a good game and it's an exclusive. So, and I think with you guys both having an Xbox One, I'd recommend you pick it up at some point and take advantage that this game is not available on any other platform. Just to maybe justify the money we've spent, because I think we've all had our pants pulled down in terms of the price cuts that have happened, but maybe we'll save that discussion for next week with some of the deals that are coming out, and every week that goes on it seems like there's going to be 20-30 quid knocked off them.
Like PS4, $399.97.
Yeah, exactly. That's 50 quid just taken out of my pocket just like that. But Josh, is there anything you want to say? I think we're ready to draw a close to this.
No, the only other thing I was going to mention was obviously once again trying to bring in the Nintendo side of things. I've been playing what I think is still probably the greatest game of all time, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time on the 3DS, and they have recently announced that Majora's Mask is going to be coming out. So I'm quite keen to finish that off to obviously get onto the Majora's Mask, which is the next in that kind of series, if you will, although it wasn't sort of directly a follow-on, but. Big releases. Nintendo pulling out the big guns on their mobile consoles, because I think the Vita has been so popular that Nintendo's started to fall off a little bit. So they're really pulling in the big names and rehashing the old games, which is going to get people, much like myself, into that kind of nostalgic feeling of going back to relative childhood and up the big games all over again. So good move by Nintendo, in my opinion. I think they'll drum up a lot of business just by doing things like that. I know certainly a lot of the other people I've been speaking to who are kind of big Nintendo fans are quite excited about the idea of the release, so definitely a good move on their behalf, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, well maybe we'll talk about Nintendo a bit more in depth next week, because neither me or Chris have got a Wii or a Wii U, so you're the sole sort of Nintendo man, the fanboy if you will, and it'll be interesting to see if you feel like your purchase of both an Xbox One and a Wii U is validated, and we'll go through that hopefully in our next show. But I think that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me on this debut edition of the Dimp Digital Podcast. Thanks very much for your time, and ta-da.
It's all right.
Yes.